Disappointed!
You ever get a haircut where they take off like 3 to 4 inches more than what you wanted? Yeah, that was the scariest part of my weekend, not this movie. Greetings, fellow mortals. Just a reminder, saying it's just my opinion is for cowards. Oh, and there will be spoilers ahead, so you have been warned. Goodbye, cookies. Thanks for being in the video for like 30 seconds. The Alien franchise isn't exactly my favorite, but that's not exactly fair to the movies themselves because I'm not that big of a horror fan. I don't really get scared by fiction. I know that it's not real, so I'm not going to start panicking when fictional characters start flatlining, but still, I can admit that Alien is one of the greatest horror movies ever made. It is close to perfection with its writing. The characters, the visuals, the setups, the payoffs, it's all amazing. I can go back and watch that movie whenever. I can see why you would take inspiration from it, but here's the thing, there is such thing as taking too much inspiration to the point that you're basically trying to remake the full movie. And that's what Alien Romulus ends up being. It is a soft remake of the original Alien film, just like how The Force Awakens is a soft remake of A New Hope. And in both soft remakes, the best part of each film ends up being the beginning, where there's a little bit more original content and setup. But as soon as the characters start going out into space, that's when you realize that there's going to be some issues. At first, the only thing you see are a few plot holes and questions that need to be answered. But you give the movie a little bit of space to fill in those gaps. I mean, you have to give a film a little bit of grace at the start, but as time goes on with Alien Romulus, you see more and more problems with none of the previous plot holes getting addressed at all. By the end, the only thing that's left is references, cameos, and parallels to previous films, meaning the writing has completely fallen off the cliff.
Cliffhanger, hanging from a cliff, and that's why he's called Cliffhanger.
Can't hold on much longer.
Alien Romulus follows Rain. Yes, her name is Rain. She and her adopted synth brother are trapped on a Corpo planet. Despite completing the required number of hours she needs to get off planet, the Corpo decides that she is required to stay on the planet because they have a work shortage. She and a group of friends realize that the Corpo is never going to let them leave, so they have to come up with a plan to get off-world themselves. Rain is specifically recruited because of her adopted synth brother Andy. He will be able to unlock many different doors on an abandoned space station where they plan to steal cryofuel for a long trip. Of course, when they get on the space station, they accidentally unfreeze a bunch of facehuggers. They manage to fight off most of the monsters and flee, but one of the facehuggers latches on to one of the spare characters, because you know at the very start that the only characters who are going to survive are Rain and Andy. Everyone else is destined to flatline. Using cryofuel, they're able to pull the facehugger off of the spare female character, only to realize that she's probably already been infected with a bunch of alien eggs. At this point, an eerily familiar synth who still functions from the original tragedy on the space station dumps a bunch of exposition and convinces a slightly reprogrammed Andy to try to flatline the spare female character. Spare jerk character realizes what's about to happen, and because he loves spare female character, he drags her off the space station onto their own ship and flies away for a bit in order to make sure that she's safe. Of course, spare female character is already implanted with eggs, so this doesn't work out well for her, for spare jerk character, or for spare pregnant character. A xenomorph emerges from spare female character's chest, killing her and causing the ship to crash back into the space station.
Oh my god, it's bad.
I ruined the car.
You did. You really did.
Rain, Andy, and spare male character rush across the station in order to try to save their friends. But spare jerk character has already been flatlined by the acid from an alien egg, in probably what is the coolest death sequence in the film, I gotta give it that. Meanwhile, spare pregnant character is trapped in a room with the xenomorph. The other characters arrive to try to save her, but then Andy refuses because the xenomorph is waiting for them to open the door, and when they do, the monster will kill all of them instead of just one of them. The xenomorph takes the spare pregnant character, meanwhile the other characters go to search for a way off the station. And this is where the film completely falls apart. A bunch of exposition is dropped explaining why they are in this situation and connecting all of the various films to this one. They realize that Spare pregnant character is still alive, so they go to rescue her, only for Spare male character to die and for Andy to be injured. Rain sends Spare pregnant character ahead, only for Spare pregnant character to inject herself with some weird fluid that will mutate her baby. Rain then reprograms Andy, taking away the most interesting aspect of the damn movie, and then they fight their way back to the ship. They fly off from the space station right as it's about to be destroyed, only to discover that Spare pregnant character is about to give birth to a monster. And this is when they rip off the original ending of Alien, with the only difference being that Rain has to fight off an evil baby human xenomorph monster. With everyone else flatlined, Rain puts an injured Andy into cryosleep in order to preserve him as they fly off to a new planet in hopes for a better life, all the while being completely ambiguous, at least until the sequel comes out. Yay!
We can squeeze 20 years of entertainment out of this one videotape.
Okay, I'm going to start with some of the things that I enjoyed. I loved the first 30 minutes as they were setting everything up. I immediately empathized with Andy and Rain's situation. That was fantastically done. I loved it. Rain loved Andy despite the fact that he was a broken down synth reprogrammed by her father. Their dynamic was top notch, with Rain acting as the big sister character to the slow Andy because his programming didn't function all that well. Andy's actor stole the show, going from slow program Andy to corporate Andy to badass fighting Andy. He was so good that I cared about the synth more than the actual people because they were just okay. They were functional. There was not anything wrong with them, but they weren't exactly flushed out because most of them were the spare characters meant to be flatlined by the xenomorphs. I loved the visuals and the audio, especially with the stuff involving space and with the practical effects with the aliens themselves. Nothing looked bad, nothing sounded bad, there weren't any bad performances. While not completely accurate, the physics on the ship were fun. They found very creative uses for gravity, for cryofuel, and for the temperature. Plus, there was a great aspect of the quiet horror of corporate oppression. But I wouldn't get too excited about the anti-corpo message. Remember, this is brought to us by Disney. Fight the power by giving all of your money to the big companies. Unfortunately, that's where the positives end. You see, the beginning was really good, making me care about Andy and Rain. But then I started to ask questions and pull the plot apart. How did this ragtag group of nobodies get to this station before anyone else? Why was Rain suddenly willing to leave Andy behind on the space station when it was already shown that he was her top priority? Why didn't Spare pregnant character think or care about how the cryosleep would affect a baby that she obviously wanted? Why didn't they go into this destroyed space station with weapons raised ready to defend themselves because something obviously destroyed it from within? Why was everyone acting like reprogrammed Andy was wrong with his decisions? Everything that he did was the correct choice. They should have killed Spare female character, and they should not have opened the door for Spare pregnant character. They were crying and horrified, all the while Andy was like, "This is best for the company." And meanwhile, I'm just thinking about, well, that was actually the best decision. Everything that he chose to do was the right thing to do for the survival of the many. I know my wife and I, if one of us was infected with an alien egg that was going to burst through our chest and kill everyone, we would tell someone to flatline us. At least a quick shot to the head would be a lot less painful than having our chest peeled open by an alien. I mean, I'd be very distraught if it's my wife, but I would still put her into a corner by herself while we figure out if she was in fact implanted with an egg or not. And in the other scene, you can see the xenomorph right behind Spare pregnant character waiting. Of course you don't open the door. It sucks, but I would realize that we couldn't do that because there were 3 people on one side safe and 1 person on the other that's in danger. But then Spare pregnant character was apparently bleeding out, so they didn't infect her with an egg. but they also didn't kill her, which makes a whole lot of sense. Spare male character died because of his stupidity, and then they had to fight off dozens of xenomorphs that suddenly appeared out of nowhere despite not being in the film earlier. And then the rest of the film with all of the action is basically callbacks to previous movies that did everything better. There was even a "get away from her, you bee," and I'm like, why did he say that? That's not in his character whatsoever. I know that they did it because reference, but still. The entire second half of this film is because reference, and that really held it back. And it's why I think that it's exactly like The Force Awakens. The Force Awakens starts with unique ideas. Rey doesn't want to leave her planet because she wants to wait for her parents. Finn is a stormtrooper that decided that he doesn't want to serve the Empire anymore. Poe is a cocky pilot who needs to be reined in a bit. But because reference, the entire film starts to fall apart as it goes on. None of the characters reached their true potential because they were trying to hang off of what came before. And the same thing could be said for Alien Romulus. There is a reference around every corner. They were basically redoing the old films, and you could see it all of the time. Meanwhile, the actual interesting ideas of Rain caring about the synth more than actual people, and Andy changing because of programming, were basically dropped after a while. Imagine if the whole film was Andy just being logical, Rain siding with Andy, and everyone else arguing with them despite the fact that it was the correct decision. But Rain was horrified by Andy's decisions because the company. Meanwhile, he was actually right every single time, and then Andy's programming was redone in an instant. Imagine that his bond with Rain conflicted with his new programming of doing what's best for the company, and he had to choose to pull the chip out of his neck. And then it could have been a bit more unique with the ending climax, where it was basically just reference to other films over and over and over again. Even the very ending where there was a secret fourth act. And I hated how they were just using guns against the xenomorphs at the end. Have you ever tried to use a firearm? If you do, you know that the kickback is insane. You could easily hurt yourself. Also, you're probably going to miss all of your shots if you haven't practiced.
Have we ever hit anybody with these guns?
I hit a bird once.
Right after the setup, Alien Romulus is basically the exact same thing as the original Alien film, just like how The Force Awakens is a remake of the original Star Wars. You can feel Disney executives' fingers reaching down into this film to put in stuff that doesn't need to be there. I'm not going to say that this is the worst thing that I've seen all year or even this month. I mean, just look at Borderlands. But while that was complete trash, this is different because it was disappointing to me. I didn't expect Borderlands to be good, but after that beginning with Alien Romulus, I had my expectations super high and then they came down crashing. Borderlands is at least fun to make fun of. This isn't, because there were a lot of good ideas here, but they were just thrown away at the end, and that's what makes it very disappointing. This isn't a terrible film, but it's a disappointing one. Rain and Andy could have been iconic characters, but the plot holes and the need to remake previous films hurt them so much. This film is definitely held together in the end by the fact that it just looks amazing. But in a few years, people are going to realize that that's not good enough. They actually wanted more from Alien Romulus, and that's understandable. They should have had Rain and Andy's connection be at the forefront of the film, conflicting with all of the other spare characters and the company synth. Unfortunately, that's not what we got. Instead, we've got member berries. They're back, baby, and they're as bad as ever. I mean, just think about it. Andy and Rain are trapped on this space station with lethal aliens, with a bunch of stupid people, and with company-mandated synths, but they pull through together to get out and live a happy life. Picking your family and the real connection that can appear with artificial intelligence and organic people. And you can keep the themes of how horrific childbirth is. That's completely fine. I don't want that to go away or anything. The first half of the film was so good and had so much potential, but immediately when you get into the second half, you can feel the Disney boardroom just reaching in, grabbing the director by the neck and telling him to do what they want. And to me, anti-corpo message and corpo mandated slop is one of the worst things that you could put on the plate. The second half of this script completely falls apart, with it only being held up by one amazing performance, by a bunch of great visuals and some good sound direction. It effectively became a mid-film, something that I'm never going to think about in a few months other than the fact that I'm very disappointed with where it went. A Disney sequel / remake that failed to live up to its potential. I wonder if that sounds familiar. But what do you think? Am I completely off base here? Was it one of the best films you've seen this year? Was it one of the worst? Is it somewhere in the middle? Leave a comment down below and let me know. I'd love to hear what you think. And remember, if you disagree with all of this, that's fine. After all, everyone is entitled to their objectively wrong opinion.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
Oh, come on. Everyone knows that's worse.
Thank you all so much for watching.
You're still here?
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Bye. Boom.
Do not despair.